settles into your routine, rearranges your mornings, and dares you to notice. For me, it began with silence. Not the peaceful kind, but the deliberate kind. The kind that lingers after someone stops sharing their thoughts because they've started sharing them with someone else. My name is Caleb Rourke. I'm not flashy. Never needed to be. I've spent the last 12 years working in legal risk analysis, evaluating contracts, uncovering hidden liabilities, and preparing cases before they ever reach a courtroom. I'm the guy companies call when they want to stay clean without making noise. My wife, Vanessa Rourke, used to respect that. Lately, she looked through me. Our mornings changed first. She stopped waiting for me before leaving. Stopped asking if I wanted coffee. Her wardrobe shifted too. Sharper lines, bolder colors, confidence stitched into every step. She'd check her reflection twice before walking out, like she was heading somewhere that demanded approval. One morning, as she grabbed her keys, I asked, "New project?" She smiled. Not warmly, not unkindly, just distant. Something like that. The house felt emptier after she left. Not physically, emotionally. Like a stage after the actors have exited, but the lights are still on. At night, she'd come home later than usual. Sometimes energized, sometimes cold, always distracted. Her phone never left her hand. Notifications were muted. The screen face down. I knew those signs. I'd seen them in hundreds of investigations, just never in my own living room. Still, I didn't accuse her. I watched. People underestimate patience. They think silence means ignorance. In my world, silence is preparation. Vanessa started talking differently too. She used words like ambition, leverage, upgrade. She'd casually compare me to people we barely knew. Some men just think bigger, she said one evening, swirling her wine. Some people don't settle, she added another night, eyes fixed on her phone. She wasn't subtle anymore. She didn't need to be. What she didn't realize was that while she was planning an exit, I was quietly documenting patterns, timestamps, inconsistencies, overlaps. I wasn't tracking her. I was tracking the truth. Then came the invitation. A formal dinner. Downtown. Elegant. She suggested it casually, like it was her idea to reconnect. "Let's go somewhere nice," she said. "Just us." Her tone was calm, confident, almost relieved. I nodded, smiled, agreed, because by then I already knew two things. First, she wasn't going there to save our marriage. Second, she believed the future was already decided. What she didn't know was that I'd already spoken to someone who decides futures for a living. And when that person speaks, confidence doesn't just fade, it collapses. The dinner invitation wasn't a surprise. It was confirmation. Vanessa didn't suggest the restaurant the way she used to, playfully, asking my opinion. This time, she named it like a destination already chosen, already approved by someone else. "It's quiet. Discreet," she said while scrolling on her phone. "I figured we should talk properly." I nodded, the same calm expression I'd practiced in front of mirrors for weeks. "Sound good." Inside, something colder settled. The days leading up to that dinner revealed more than she realized. Vanessa stopped pretending to hide her excitement. She hummed while getting ready, smiled at messages she thought I didn't see. Her confidence sharpened into something almost cruel, like she was already rehearsing her freedom speech. Meanwhile, I kept living my routine. Early mornings, coffee alone, commutes filled with phone calls I never discussed at home. Vanessa assumed I was buried in work, oblivious. She didn't understand that my job trained me to listen for what people don't say. Patterns always surface. One afternoon, while reviewing a corporate dispute downtown, I ran into Eleanor Price, a senior legal clerk I'd worked with years ago. She recognized me instantly. "Caleb Rourke," she said, smiling, still fixing messes quietly. "Someone has to," I replied. We talked, casually at first, then carefully. I didn't tell her about my marriage. I didn't need to. I asked questions instead, about recent filings, sealed motions, family court schedules. I listened more than I spoke. By the time we parted, she knew enough to understand I wasn't asking out of curiosity. I was preparing. That night, Vanessa came home late again. Her heels echoed too loudly in the hallway. She smelled like a different cologne layered beneath her perfume, subtle, but not unnoticeable. "You have a good day?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "Productive." That word again. Later, when she showered, I sat alone in the living room, staring at our wedding photo. We looked younger, less guarded. She used to lean into me naturally, like trust was effortless. I wondered when admiration turned into comparison, when patience turned into judgment, when love turned into strategy. Vanessa believed she was upgrading her life. She believed success was loud, visible, impressive to strangers. She believed security meant proximity to power. She had no idea how quiet real power could be. The night of the dinner arrived with perfect timing. Rain tapping against the city, reflections blurring the streets like everything was already dissolving. Vanessa dressed carefully, not provocatively, intentionally. The dress wasn't new, it was symbolic. Something she'd worn once before, long ago, when she wanted to remind me of who she used to be. "You look nice," I said honestly. She glanced at me, surprised, then smiled. "You too." That smile wasn't affectionate. It was polite, final. At the restaurant, the host led us to a private corner table. Candles flickered. Soft music played. Vanessa ordered wine without asking my preference. We talked about nothing first. Weather, work, empty words stacked on top of something heavier. Then she leaned back, exhaled slowly, and said it. Not cruelly, not angrily, confidently. "I don't think this marriage works anymore." I didn't react. I let the silence stretch. "I've grown," she continued, "and I need someone who matches that growth. Someone more established." She watched my face carefully, like she was waiting for anger, for pleading, for collapse. I gave her none. "I've met someone," she added, lowering her voice just enough to sound respectful. "He understands ambition. He's successful, focused. He doesn't settle." That was when I realized something important. She wasn't confessing out of guilt. She was informing me, like the decision was already approved. "I see," I said quietly. Her shoulders relaxed. My calm unsettled her more than shouting would have. She kept talking. About timelines. About how she didn't want things to get ugly. About how she'd already thought things through. She didn't mention Julian Mercer by name, but she didn't have to. I knew who he was. I'd known for weeks. I knew where they met. I knew what promises he'd made. I knew what he didn't know. When she finished, she waited. This was the moment she expected me to break. To beg. To bargain. To accuse. Instead, I folded my napkin neatly and said, "If you're done, then we should do this properly." Her eyes narrowed. "Properly. Legally," I replied. That's when the confidence flickered. 2 weeks later, we stood in a courtroom. Vanessa arrived radiant, composed, certain. Julian wasn't there, but his influence was. His lawyers, his assurances, his quiet belief that this was a formality. She believed the same. I stood beside my attorney, hand steady, expression neutral. The judge, Harold Whitman, reviewed the file slowly. Too slowly for Vanessa's liking. She shifted in her seat, checked her watch once. Then the judge cleared his throat. "What we have here," he said calmly, "is not a standard dissolution." Vanessa's smile froze. Judge Whitman continued, voice measured. "There are financial disclosures that contradict earlier statements. Omitted assets. Overlapping interests." Vanessa turned toward me sharply for the first time. "What is this?" she whispered. I didn't answer. The judge looked directly at her. "Mrs. Rourke, before this court proceeds, there are matters that must be addressed. Matters that significantly change the assumptions under which you entered this proceeding." Her confidence didn't shatter immediately. It cracked, and that was only the beginning. The courtroom felt smaller once the judge spoke. Vanessa's posture, once effortless and assured, stiffened as if the air itself had turned heavy. She glanced at her attorney, then back at me, searching my face for some sign, anger, triumph, anything. I gave her nothing. I sat still, hands folded, eyes forward. Judge Whitman adjusted his glasses and continued reading. "Mrs. Rourke," he said evenly, "the court has reviewed supplemental filings submitted last week. These documents raise concerns about incomplete disclosures and potential conflicts tied to third-party financial involvement." Vanessa's attorney rose quickly. "Your Honor, we were not made aware of." "You were," the judge interrupted calmly. The court acknowledged receipt. Page 4, line 12. Silence followed. Vanessa's confidence didn't vanish all at once. It drained slowly, like color leaving a photograph. I remembered how sure she'd sounded at dinner, how easily she'd spoken about replacing me, about moving on, as if I were an outdated version of her life. She believed the future belonged to her because she'd aligned herself with someone she thought was untouchable. Julian Mercer had promised her protection, influence, a soft landing. What he hadn't promised, and couldn't protect her from, was the truth. Judge Whitman turned a page. There is evidence of financial overlap between Mrs. Rourke and Mr. Mercer prior to formal separation. Joint travel expenses, shared investments, undeclared transfers. Vanessa shook her head. That's not. Those were personal matters. The judge looked up. Personal matters become legal matters when they affect asset division and sworn statements. Her lawyer leaned down, whispering urgently. I saw the panic finally take root. Vanessa turned toward me again, eyes sharp. You did this, she hissed under her breath. I met her gaze calmly. You did, I replied just as quietly. Because she had. She'd underestimated silence. She'd mistaken patience for weakness. She'd never imagined that the man she'd dismissed as ordinary had spent years preparing for moments exactly like this. Judge Whitman addressed the room. Given these discrepancies, the court will pause proceedings pending further review. Temporary orders will be adjusted. Vanessa's breath caught. Adjusted how? The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Asset access will be restricted, he said. Certain accounts frozen. Additionally, the court requires clarification regarding Mr. Mercer's involvement, as his financial representations appear inconsistent with independent records. That was the moment the foundation cracked completely. Vanessa's confidence collapsed, not in a dramatic outburst, but in something far worse. Confusion. After the session adjourned, the hallway outside buzzed with murmurs. Vanessa pulled away from her attorney and walked straight toward me. What did you do? She demanded, voice trembling despite her effort to stay composed. I lowered my voice. I told the truth. She laughed once, sharply. No, you set me up. I shook my head. I documented what you chose to hide. Her phone buzzed. She checked it, then checked it again, face draining of color. Another message followed. Then another. Julian. The man she believed was solid ground was suddenly distant. Unreachable. Concerned. I watched realization spread across her face as she understood what was happening. Julian Mercer wasn't stepping in. He was stepping away. Because when his advisors realized the court was looking too closely, he'd done what powerful men often do when exposure looms. He protected himself first. Vanessa slumped into a chair, hands shaking. I thought he. She stopped, swallowing hard. He said he'd handle everything. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. People who promise control, I said quietly, usually don't share it. She looked up at me then, not with anger, but fear. You knew, she whispered. All this time. Yes. Ow. I paused. Not to be dramatic, but because the answer mattered. Because while you were chasing appearances, I said, I was paying attention. She shook her head slowly. You could have stopped me. I gave you chances, I replied. You didn't want honesty. You wanted assurance. Days passed. News travels fast in professional circles. Julian's name started appearing in conversations he didn't want to be part of. Not accusations, questions. Quiet ones. The kind that make people nervous. Vanessa called me one night, voice raw. He won't answer, she said. He said we should distance ourselves. I closed my eyes briefly. Of course he did. You ruined everything, she said, breaking. No, I replied. I survived it. She hung up without another word. The next court date came quickly. This time, Vanessa didn't arrive glowing. She arrived guarded, quieter, smaller. Judge Whitman spoke plainly. The findings were clear. The consequences measured. No theatrics. No humiliation. Just accountability. Vanessa lost the leverage she thought she had. Lost the narrative she'd built. Lost the future she'd assumed was guaranteed. And me? I didn't gain revenge in the way movies promise. There was no shouting. No public collapse. What I gained was something better. Clarity. As the judge concluded, I felt something lift from my chest. Not triumph, but release. Vanessa looked at me one last time before leaving the courtroom. Her eyes searched for something familiar. Something forgiving. I didn't offer it. Not because I was cruel, but because growth sometimes means refusing to step backward. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city felt brighter, cleaner. I stood alone for a moment, breathing deeply, knowing the hardest part was over. The revenge wasn't loud. It was final. The quiet that followed the final court date felt unfamiliar at first. Not empty, cleared. For months, my life had been built around anticipation. Watching, waiting, preparing for moments that demanded restraint instead of reaction. When it was over, there was no applause, no dramatic exit. Just the sound of my footsteps echoing down the courthouse steps as I walked away alone. Vanessa didn't follow. I heard later that she stayed behind, arguing with her attorney, still trying to negotiate a reality that had already moved on without her permission. I didn't wait to see it. I didn't need closure in the form of her regret. Closure had already arrived. In the weeks that followed, my routine changed, but not in the way I expected. Mornings became quieter, but not lonely. I woke up without tension in my shoulders, without the constant weight of suspicion. Coffee tasted different when it wasn't rushed. Even the silence in the house felt honest. Vanessa reached out once more. Her message wasn't dramatic. No accusations. Just a simple line. I didn't think it would end like this. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. Neither did I. And that was all. Julian Mercer faded from the picture quickly. People like him don't disappear loudly. They step back into shadows when the spotlight becomes uncomfortable. His influence dissolved the moment it stopped protecting him. Whatever promises he'd made to Vanessa evaporated the second accountability entered the room. That realization seemed to hurt her more than losing me. I didn't celebrate that. I didn't take satisfaction in her disappointment. What I felt was something steadier, a sense of alignment. For the first time in a long while, my actions and values matched without compromise. Work shifted too. My name carried more weight after the case. Not because of the drama, but because discretion had once again proven its power. I was offered a new role shortly after, one that came with responsibility instead of recognition. I accepted without hesitation. Success doesn't always arrive with applause. Sometimes it arrives as peace. One evening, months later, I ran into Vanessa unexpectedly at a grocery store. No lawyers, no tension, just two people standing in different aisles of the same past. She looked thinner, not fragile, reflective. "Caleb," she said quietly. "Vanessa." We stood there, surrounded by ordinary life, and for a moment I saw the person she used to be, the one who laughed easily, who once believed loyalty mattered more than optics. "I didn't lose you because you weren't enough," she said softly. "I lost you because I wanted something louder." I nodded, and I stayed because I valued something quieter. She smiled faintly. "I hope you found what you were looking for." I considered that, then answered honestly. "I found when I stopped compromising." We parted without bitterness. Driving home that night, I realized something important. Revenge isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's about not losing yourself while someone else does. The strongest moment of the entire ordeal wasn't the judge's words or Vanessa's collapse of confidence. It was the moment I chose not to chase validation from someone who no longer understood my worth. I didn't rebuild my life to prove anything. I rebuilt it to protect my peace. And that, quiet, steady, undeniable, was the most powerful outcome of all.